Right, Vodafone. So, have I still got my...
Right, you don't do this as a thing. Can you put my crown in with it?
Do you want the software running on here? What's it called?
I can still keep playing this. So at least your computer's running it separately.
Yeah, now running.
Could actually just leave that on the table, David. You don't need it.
Oh, true, but just that if I move, then it's full.
As long as you don't get up.
Yeah. Now, do you want that microphone too close to me or anything? Or is it turn that on?
It's okay.
Okay, so right. So here are my notes. Just for I'll leave them on the screen for reference. We aren't necessarily going to use them directly. So these are the ones I did about a week ago. Since I've done at least one more migration since then, and we can update it. So first question is, anybody here still at the point where they haven't yet decided who they're going to migrate their email account to? If you've actually made a choice already, then we can move on to the next bit. So that's the first question. So most people I know who've told me about it have gone to Gmail. A few people have gone to Outlook.com. I'm experimenting with Zoho, and I've just got one step further in my experimentation of that earlier. I've now got one of my other domain names working with them, and it's seemed to work quite nicely. And there are other options. iCloud is a possibility. And last meeting, I was hesitant to recommend iCloud because it had seemed to have broken for me, where the email wasn't working anymore, I couldn't send. Turns out that all I actually was turn the account off and back on again, and that fixed it. So something in the mail settings for the iCloud email account were broken, and by disabling it and enabling it, that fixed them. I don't know what it was because I couldn't see them, but that was, so iCloud is a reasonable choice if you actually have a iCloud address. But as we've just been talking about, migrating your Apple ID to an iCloud address is not possible. You have to actually have a non-iCloud address anyway if you already have a non-iCloud Apple ID. So that may not work. So Zoho is impressing me more and more the more I use it. It seems to work quite nicely. As I said though, it's aimed at small business users. It's fine for a single user account. You can set it up with a domain name for up to 25 users with up to 5 gigabytes of storage per user for free. But you do have to have your own domain name to do that, and you need to know enough about how to manage domain name servers and configure it correctly, unless you get them to do it and then they can't do a .nz address. So it's best if you know enough about DNS to be able to work your way around that. I do, so I can do that sort of thing, and I can help other people if they want to sort of sort that out if they actually want their own domain name rather than using a Gmail or an Outlook or something like that. I haven't looked any further at Proton Mail, and nobody else expressed any interest in it, so that's more of a sort of a one-off experiment. That was just the possible option if people are fussy about their email being encrypted and things like that. That's a possible option. So we got past pick a new email provider for everybody who's saw in the situation. So you have to create an account for that provider. Then you need to add that account to your email client. Is anybody stuck on that stage? So yep. So basically in Apple Mail, if you go into Mail Accounts, there is that actually takes you in your system preferences, and there is a plus button down the bottom. And when you click the plus button, no there isn't, you have to click the account type by the looks of it. It's slightly different. If there's nothing selected, I think if one of them is selected, then you can click the plus button. That's what, yeah. So you click the plus button, you get to see a list of major known account providers on the right hand side, or add other account. So if you're going to Gmail, there's a Google item right there. You click on that, and it actually asks you to sign in using your Gmail credentials. So you go through the process of creating your webmail account with Gmail first, and then once you want to add it to your mail software, you come in here, go create a new account, click on Google, type in your Gmail address, type in your password, and it sets it all up for you. That's easy. That's one of the easiest parts of setting up with Google. If you went with Outlook, the correct option on the computer, you'll notice there is no Outlook listed there, is actually Exchange. But confusingly, when you're setting it up on your iPhone or iPad, you don't set up as an Exchange account, you set it up as an Outlook account. They've got a different option. They've got two different options on iOS devices. And if you try and set it up as an Exchange account, which is what I did the first time, it doesn't work. You have to go delete the account and create it again as an Outlook account, and then it works all right. So just keep that in mind. It's a little bit different. Twitter and Facebook aren't relevant for email, probably. LinkedIn isn't relevant either. Anybody even considered going to Yahoo? I hope not, given all the problems that Extra have with them and the rest of the world have with them, with breaches and things. America Online is about to get shut down, so that option is probably going to disappear in a future operation of version of the operating system. Vimeo and Flickr aren't relevant either. If you're hosting your account anywhere else, you click on Add Other Account, and you tell it it's a mail account, and then you specify what your email address is and what your password is, and it tries to work out what the correct details are for that particular service. Usually doesn't work it out, and you then have to actually start typing in all the technical details about what's the domain name of their incoming mail server, what's the domain name of their outgoing mail server, which options do I need to use, all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot easier if you use one that it knows about, because you don't have to type all that rubbish in. But if you want to host your email anywhere else, you do need to be able to find that information and type it in. Once you've gone through all that, you end up with something resembling what I've got here. Now, this is a more extreme example where I've actually created accounts everywhere. But that's my still existing POP account on Actrix, dating back to 1990, which I've now been more actively getting things off and onto something else. So that one is the residue of my WelMac one that I was hosting on Actrix, which I have actually now stopped using. I've moved it to my own server on a different domain name. That's my ClearNet one, which I expected was dead, because that's the one which I've migrated. That's my own mail server IMAP account. That's another IMAP account on my mail server, which I use for WelMac stuff. There's my Gmail account. There's my Outlook account, there's my Zoho account, and there's my iCloud account. So I've got all of these set up just as examples to see how they work, and so I can show people. But the basic point here is if you have more than one account, you will see these little triangles next to the standard set of mailboxes. And within that, if you click the triangle to reveal it, you'll see one item for each of your accounts. So if I go into Mail Preferences and then look at accounts, you'll see for the active ones I've got, which are up to the line ClearNet, each of those corresponds to what's in that list on the left-hand side. So not necessarily in the same order, but they're all there somewhere. So for each account in the preferences and mail, you'll notice that this one's an Exchange account for Outlook, that one's an IMAP account, that one's an IMAP account, that one's an IMAP account, etc., etc. Those last three are POP accounts. I don't know why they're listed in that order. It may be that I've dragged them down there to remind me that those ones are getting pushed out because I'm going to get rid of them. It is by default. If you just create it the normal way it is, you can in fact configure Gmail to enable POP. I do not recommend it, because if you use POP, you can only access your inbox. And Gmail, in fact, one of the problems people are running into when they've migrated their email from Vodafone is that everything forwarded by Vodafone is treated as junk by wherever it's going. So you have to be able to look at the junk folder on the server to see all your other email. That means you cannot use POP because POP can't access it. You've got to use IMAP or the webmail interface. So I recommend you use IMAP, especially if you have multiple devices, because if you have a single device, POP's not too bad. But as soon as you have more than one device, as soon as you start using POP, every device separately downloads all your email and keeps a copy of it. I have thousands and thousands of unread email on my iPhone and iPad because I was using a POP account, and I can't get rid of it without individually selecting each message and deleting them, which is just a pain in the neck. So just wasting storage. An IMAP account is an awful lot better managed on iOS devices because it only downloads the messages you look at, and it doesn't need to download attachments, so it saves space, and it can basically act as a cache and throw out ones you haven't looked at recently. So it's much more clever handling if you use IMAP rather than POP for an iOS device in particular. On the computer, there is a setting under somewhere. Where's it hiding? There we go. Download attachments. Under most IMAP accounts, it actually has a choice for which attachments you'll actually download, so it can cut down on storage requirements on your computer by only downloading either all attachments, recent attachments, or none of them by default. So that means you get the email message, but the attachment doesn't get downloaded automatically, which saves quite a lot of time and space. And when you want the attachment, you click a little download button and it actually fetches it off the server. So that's a useful feature as well. I'm not aware of any option to selectively keep part of your email on the computer from an IMAP account. It appears to always download the whole lot. It takes a while to do it, but you can start using it straight away while it's continuing the syncing in the background. The other nice feature about an IMAP account is that you can safely delete the account and all the email in it and recreate it, because it all comes back down from the server again. You cannot do that with a POP account. And one of the key things to be aware of when you are migrating away from Vodafone is that they nearly always use POP accounts. And when you're finished, you think you're finished and you don't need your old Vodafone account anymore. If you delete that account from mail, it will delete all the email that's stored in the inbox and the sent folder and the drafts folder and the trash folder. It's gone forever because the only copy is on your computer. So you have to be aware of the fact that all that email is sitting in there before you delete the account, which is why I'm recommending, if in doubt, do not delete the account until you can talk to me about it and make sure you've actually cleaned it out properly.
You're saying it's all right as long as it's downloaded to your computer?
The issue is deleting the POP account from your computer. Because all the email is downloaded to your computer, that's the only place it exists. If you delete the POP account, which is like your old Vodafone or ClearNet or Paradise one, you will delete all the email that belongs to that account. So if you have a look in my Actrix WelMac account, you'll see its inbox is completely empty. Because what I did is I moved all the email out of that account, and I'm now to a point where I can delete that account safely. You also need to make sure you check the sent folder. Again, I've already moved all the email out of my sent folder. But if I have a look at my Actrix one, I have mail going back to 2003 sitting in the sent folder. And in the inbox, I've got mail going back to 2010, because that's when I started using mail rather than Eudora, which has got stuff stored elsewhere. So if I deleted my Actrix account right now, I would lose 7,700 messages out of my inbox forever, apart from backups that I've had trouble getting them out of probably.
Dave, are you saying that Paradise is a POP account?
It will be by default. Some people did set up IMAP accounts. I've seen one person with an IMAP account on Clear. I don't think Paradise ever supported IMAP, so all Paradise accounts will be POP. ClearNet accounts might be IMAP, but are usually POP. So the POP accounts are dangerous to delete. IMAP accounts are not dangerous to delete because you can just create them again and all the email will come back.
I've got a question. I've found one email that comes in fairly regularly has been put by, since I've been doing Gmail,
Into the junk folder.
into junk.
Yep.
Now I can drag it out and put it where it should be.
Yep.
How can I tell it to
Not be junk. Yes, I haven't actually resolved that question myself yet. I saw that for somebody else I was helping, and my initial attempt was it doesn't actually mark them as junk as far as mail's concerned, it just puts them in the junk folder. That's because it's Gmail that's doing it, not mail. If mail does its junk and moves it to the junk folder, it tags it brown like that one there and leaves it in the junk folder. But if Gmail does it before it even gets to your computer, then that doesn't happen, so it just sits in the junk folder. Hopefully what happens is if you drag messages out of junk and put them back in an inbox, that also tells Gmail to do the same thing, and hopefully that's a signal to Gmail to say this is not actually junk, and it will learn it. I do know if you use the webmail interface to Gmail and you manually move a message from spam, whatever they call it, on Gmail into inbox, that actually does, in fact it's even got a button on the Gmail web interface. If I find my Gmail, where's that hiding?
I think I've seen it on
Yep, it's actually got a not spam button. If I can find it, somewhere in here I've got amongst my multitudes of windows, there we go, that one is my Gmail account. If I come in here and I go into spam and I pick, these really are all spam, but let's just look at one of them. There is a not spam button up the top there. If I click that, that's explicitly telling Gmail this is not spam, and hopefully it will learn the fact that it's not spam. So if in doubt, you could try using the web interface just to see if that actually helps it to learn. Now I haven't done a similar test with Outlook to see whether, because I haven't used it heavily enough yet to get a feel for how it handles junk mail.
I think it does learn, David, because
Yep.
when I first joined Gmail, it drove me nuts. It put half my mail into spam.
But were you using Apple Mail to drag them out into the inbox, or were you using the Gmail web interface?
I was in Gmail.
Right, yeah, because the web interface I'm sure will learn, but the Apple Mail, doing an Apple Mail might not, unless Gmail's smart enough to recognise that. No. Yeah, which is a pain, because I tried doing that myself with the person I was helping, and I usually found I missed one of the button clicks, and it ended up being marked as junk still, so it was more trouble than it was worth. I think it's easier just to drag it out of junk and drag it into inbox, and that will be enough of a clue.
Not spam button.
Oh, there's another one there. So that's a not spam button there, and that's also a not spam button. They've got two different things for the same feature, as far as I can tell. So yeah, the Gmail web interface is a bit clunky. Graham?
Could you ask anybody who's watching the stream to send a message through the live chat to see it's working?
Is anybody actually watching the live stream on their device at the moment? If you are, then please send a question through the send a question feature if you can. Graham would like to test that. But if not, don't worry about it. Okay. Yeah, so that's the sort of the main thing to be aware of there. So if I go back into my account list again, where's it gone? Mail preferences. Yep. Shane's hiding around the corner there. Not likely, yeah. No, he's not on it, so. Yeah, okay, so that's just the main thing to be aware of, is if you're not sure about the risk of deleting your email, don't delete your Vodafone Clear Paradise account when you've finished the migration process. And in any case, that would be one of the last things you do. The only issue you might run into is if you don't delete it, after November the 30th, when Vodafone actually shuts down their mail servers, you may find that it starts getting errors whenever it tries to fetch mail from that account because it doesn't exist anymore. So at that point, what I'd expect to see is a little zigzag mark and an error message possibly pop up. But once it's in that state, it probably won't keep bugging you about it. So it'll just be then failing to fetch mail from that account every time it tries. And it should be reasonably safe to leave it like that until you're confident you got all the email out. But for those who are confident enough with it, the basic process you need to do is you reveal the contents of your inbox so you can see all the individual accounts. You go into the inbox for your POP account. You then click on one of the messages in here, so you've actually got the right context selected. You then use the select all command, and then you drag them somewhere which is not inside that account. And the usual place you drag it to would be your inbox on your new account. And what that will do is we'll take all the email from your computer and upload it to Gmail. It will take a while. Now, if you don't actually want all your historic email on your Gmail account, what you can do instead is you can create a mailbox under the On My Mac heading and drag all your email out of the inbox into the new mailbox under On My Mac. So you could call it Old Inbox or something like that, or Paradise Inbox or something like that. And everything under On My Mac is totally separate from any email account. It doesn't matter where it came from originally. If the message is in there, it's safe. It's only the ones that are in the inbox, sent, junk, trash folders that are at risk of being lost, because they only exist, they belong in their particular account. Okay? So once you've done inbox, the idea is your inbox should be completely empty. And of course, it's best to do this after you've stopped receiving email from Vodafone. So you want to get the forwarding working first. You need to wait the obligatory up to 3 days for them to actually start doing the forwarding after you tell them to do it. And once you've confirmed that your email is now arriving automatically in your new account, then it's safe to start thinking about closing off your old one. John?
I just wonder about that. I've set up a Gmail account. I haven't asked Vodafone to do transfer.
Yeah.
And the reason is I get about 25 spams about Bitcoin every day. I thought if I asked Vodafone to transfer them, whoever does Bitcoin is going to start annoying me again.
They will, but Gmail's junk mail filtering is hopefully better and they'll all end up in junk. Unfortunately, so will everything else, so you're going to have to wade through all the junk to find the non-junk initially until it learns. So one useful trick that what some people have been suggesting to me is when you are setting up your forwarding rule, it is handy if you create an alias on your new account. So for example, if you have an Outlook account, you can create a second email address for it. And then what you do is you set your Vodafone forwarding rule to go to your not new email address, but the alias that's on it. And if you've got to the point in future where you've actually managed to stop all the real messages coming through and it's all spam, then you simply delete the alias and all that email goes into the bit bucket, never arrives anymore. Now, with Gmail, it's a little bit more complicated. because Gmail doesn't let you set up multiple addresses on the same account. So you can either set up 2 Gmail accounts and have one of them just for stuff coming from Vodafone and one for everything else, or Gmail has a trick where you put a plus sign and anything you like after that on the end of your email address, and that's I forget what the term they use for it now, but it's actually an automatic alias for your account. So effectively, anything, if your email account in my case is david.empson@gmail.com, anything I put after a david.empson plus was also my email account. So you can then forward your Vodafone mail to whatever your account is, plus Vodafone, for example, and then at some point in future you can add a rule in Gmail saying if anything comes to that plus Vodafone, delete it. So you never see it. So you can do a similar sort of trick with Gmail, just implement it slightly differently.
Emails allowed me to set up 3 different accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, you can set up multiple accounts. There's one catch though. They want to verify you exist as a real person, and that usually involves a phone number. And you can only do 2 phone numbers within, what did we decide it was? There's a time limit on it. If you've created one and then months later you create another one, you're fine. If you create 2 in a short sequence and then try and create a third one, it will die. And say, no, you can't. You've already used that one number twice. Give me a different phone number. So Gmail's a bit fussy about that. Yep.
You're getting rid of your Actrix.
I will eventually, yes.
Yeah. Is there a good reason for that?
I don't want to keep paying them for it.
Oh,
It's costing me $10 a month.
Actrix account. I just wondered if you.
No, that's just because I'm no longer an Actrix customer, apart from my email address.
Yeah.
So my email address I've had with them since 1990. However, that may change. I may go back to Actrix again once the magical arrival of fibre in my street happens, which is now rumoured for to be March, and that would then give me the option of getting an account with somebody other than Vodafone. And then I might go back to Actrix again at that point anyway. They're owned by Voyager, yeah, but I've still got the account, so I deliberately kept it alive after I stopped them being my ISP. But effectively, I have a dial-up account with Actrix that I never dial up. That's what I'm paying them for. So, yep.
Excuse me, I've been busy watching this, I haven't been listening to you 100%. But do I understand correctly, if you've got Paradise being forwarded to you,
On some other service, yep.
and then they cut it off in November, all the mail in your inbox will go?
No, all the mail in the inbox that's still on the server and not downloaded to your computer will go at the end of November. Stuff that's already on the computer is going to be okay. The only issue with Vodafone, with Paradise accounts after November is that you'll get errors trying to fetch mail, and if you delete the account, you've got to make sure you move all your email out of the account first. Yes, if you don't do forwarding, your email address stops working completely. So that's important to keep in mind. So for example, John, in your case, if you choose not to forward your email address because you're getting so much spam, that email address will cease to work for everybody as of November the 30th. So you must do the forwarding before November the 30th, otherwise it will die.
What I've done is to give my new email address to those people I want to deal with.
Yeah. The problem is all the ones you don't know about. That's the difficulty. It's like in my Actrix account case, I've got things coming out of the woodwork left, right, and centre. Oh yeah, that's right. 15 years ago, I did such and such with that email address. So trying to remember them all is impossible. I've got so many things linked to that account. I've done all the major mailing lists already to get them off that one, but I keep finding more and more things, and some of them are a bit like personal emails coming from people. So I'm now going to have to start actively asking people to please use this address instead, and I have to decide which one I'm going to use though, because I've got multiple other email addresses. So.
So if you're getting forwarding done from Paradise,
Yep.
in my case, down to iCloud, how would it show? It still shows Paradise, won't it?
Yes, I'm wondering if I got an example. If I send an email to TS2 ClearNet, it might take a minute to. How does this come through? Whoops. I remember seeing it. I don't quite remember the details off the top of my head. I've seen it on somebody else's machine who already had forwarding set up. Basically, the email arrives. Vodafone went through 2 different stages. Initially, everything had changed to being sent from Vodafone, which confused the hell out of everybody. So they changed it. So it now still says who it came from originally, and it's got an extra header added saying resent from with something in Vodafone. So if I wait long enough, hopefully that will show up in my inbox. It may be a little delay while Vodafone forwards it, because that's got to go.
Round the last 3 times.
Which one's it being forwarded to? I'm trying to remember. Yep, I'll keep an eye out for it. I can't remember which account I forwarded it to off the top of my head. I think it's that one, but I'll confirm once it arrives anyway. But that takes a wee while for them to forward the messages anyway. So and sometimes they delete them without telling you. They think it's spam.
Well, I got 2 messages, I got 3 email addresses to Paradise. I've had 2 emails and they recorded 2 of the addresses, which I've done, but not for the 3rd one. I got another email just the other day saying, sort of blanket email, go and do this.
Yeah, okay.
So when do I actually start doing the forwarding?
Well, the forwarding, you get a personalised email from Vodafone saying, this, you must click this link, go to this page and fill in your details. Once you've done that and hit submit, whatever the button is, you cannot then do it again for the same account, because if you try, it tells you this has already been done, go away. So you can only set up the forwarding once for each of your accounts. You need that personalised email in order to do it, because if you don't have it, you can't actually get the personalised link that's in the email. And one problem that some people have encountered is that Vodafone's own spam filter catches their link, their forwarding instructions email. So you have to actually go into your ClearNet or Paradise webmail, look in its junk folder to see if it's caught Vodafone's own message saying your account's going to die. So I pity anybody who has, unfortunately, in the case of being totally unaware of this and doesn't know that this is happening and it's gone into their junk folder and they'll never know about it and their email stops working. Because basically Vodafone's own, they basically cannot cope with their own email systems that they've inherited from all the companies they took over, and they can't reconfigure their own email systems to know that that's not spam, which is bloody stupid.
I think they said it was allow several days for all.
Yes, basically they said allow 3 business days.
To be on vigil for the next few days.
Yes, unfortunately they don't tell you when it's doing it. I tested my own one. All that happens is it starts forwarding to the new account. There it is, it's arrived.
So it should either arrive or we should
Oops.
see it in a junk folder out on the web.
Well, what should happen, basically what I did was with mine is that once I'd set up the forwarding rule, I then every day emailed myself on the old address to see where it ended up. And once it started ending up on my new email address, I knew that the forwarding was working. Obviously, if you're getting more, if it's an actively used account, all your emails are going to start arriving on the new account. The problem is, if it's going straight into junk, you may not notice unless you go and watch your junk folder. So if I look at the headers on that one, there we go. Return path, so where does that come from? Received from, now that's interesting because that was actually one I sent via ClearNet. It has not gained the correct headers. It's just been forwarded internally by Clear's mail server, so it doesn't actually have the resent from header. So what I need to do is instead send one from Outlook to my Clear address. So this is testing forwarding via Vodafone. And we want to take this one from something which I know is going to use something outside Vodafone. This is another test. What do the headers look like? Send that one via Outlook. So I'm not going through ClearNet and then it comes in and then it gets sent back out again. It's a different route for the mail, so it handles it differently. So I've also found that even though they're forwarding email, anybody who's still a ClearNet customer and is using the ClearNet or Paradise or Vodafone mail service to send mail, it doesn't correctly forward it. It's only stuff that comes in from outside their servers that gets forwarded. Stuff that's coming from inside still goes to your old account. So you may find, particularly spam, my work account is one that I've noticed is getting random bits of spam, and they all originated on ClearNet. So somebody else on ClearNet sending spam to my address, and that's still getting through even though the forwarding rule's been set up.
I was going to ask the workshop, but in that case, since it's clear on his to do this, how do you
Okay, normally what happens is if you have any specific accounts folder selected and you create a new message, it will default to that account. So if, for example, you happen to be looking at the Gmail account, and you go new message, it will be from Gmail. But if you don't have a specific account selected It will just use the default for mail, and that one is configured in Mail's preferences, composing, send new messages from, and in there you can pick which of your email addresses you want. Now, that also raises an interesting point. You'll notice there that I've got quite a lot more email addresses than I have accounts. If I go back into my accounts view, you'll see that you can actually set up email aliases. So this one, I've got 2 different email accounts set up, addresses set up on the same account. So you can have a single account, as long as the server is actually configured to actually have those aliases defined, then you can add them in your email client, and all of those addresses are then valid ones that work with the same account. So for the WelMac one, for example, I've got 4 different addresses that I can send from. They're all linked to that account. So they have to be recognised as valid addresses by the server. You can't just arbitrarily put things in there. But as long as you've already set up aliases on your server account, you can put them in here as well. So for example, president, inquiries and editor are all addresses that I use for at different times, and that's the actual account which I don't use except as my internal reference.
Same with me. When you send registrations for help desk and that, it comes out as VP at WelMac.org.nz. It's the same thing, it's an alias. So I've got that plus membership at WelMac.org.nz
Yep.
under that same.
And you can add aliases as long as your account is actually configured to use those aliases, you can send from them as well by doing that. Okay.
David,
Yep.
could you just say to Shane yes, please?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Whatever that is.
I just said, is it working, Graham?
Right. Right.
Because I did a live question and it came through. So
Good. Okay. So the questions work. That's good. Okay. Right. So I don't want to spend too much longer on this now. So if people need individual help, the help desk next Saturday is preferably the best option. We can go through several people at once there. If anybody needs individual help with more than that, I'm available, time permitting, to come around and visit people at home. I do charge for that, but not too unreasonably. Unfortunately, as I said, it might take 2 or 3 hours to get through the whole thing. But for free help at the help desk is the best option if you can make it there. If you can't, and you just have occasional questions, I'm happy to answer questions via email. And as I said, I'll keep updating my notes as new issues come to light.
Just a question.
Yep.
With Apple ID, changing that, do you need all the computers? All your...
Preferably, yep. I'll go through that just briefly, just to give you an idea of where you're going primarily. The website appleid.apple.com is the one which I've been using to control the whole process, generally speaking. And if I sign in with one of my non-iCloud Apple IDs, that one is going to be a pain because I need my iPod, which is where? Jacket. Where's my jacket? Make sure I don't pull that over. I'm using 2-factor authentication on all of my Apple IDs, so I need a device to authenticate it. And this is my second Apple ID, which doesn't have an iPhone associated with it, so I've got to have the right internet connection in order to do it to my iPod Touch.
So what was that?
Apple ID, all one word, .apple.com.
Apple ID?
Just that part of it there. If you can see that. Apple ID, all one word, .apple.com. And then you can sign in using your Apple ID. Is this on anything? No. I'll need to share my personal hotspot on, please. That should do the trick. And then this one, Wi-Fi, that one that's joining it. Right. So if you turn on 2-factor authentication, what you typically see is this thing pop up using your Apple ID. And what I get, if you can just see briefly on my iPod screen there, I get a message popping up saying that Apple ID sign-in requested for this particular Apple ID. Your Apple ID is being used to sign in on the web near Epsom, Auckland. The location seems to be utterly random. It depends obviously on what the IP address is and where Apple's and the internet thinks that address is located, which is completely wrong. And then there's, yeah, it's a bit random, but do not allow or allow. So if I tap allow, then my iPod now shows me a random number, which is a 6-digit number, and I have to type that number on my computer. So now the advantage of using this system is that somebody can only sign in to access your account information if they've physically got one of your devices. So if somebody hacks your account password, they still can't get in because they need one of your devices to get into it. And also it means that they delete the security questions, which that's one of the other problems I've run into, people not knowing their security questions. Because when you try and sign into this account, this website, if you set up security questions, the first thing it asks you is to answer 2 of your security questions. And if you don't know what they were, you're screwed. So luckily what we've been able to do, as long as the email address is working, you can reset your security questions as long as you've got access to your email account. So this is why I'm also suggesting it's a good idea to change your Apple ID while you know your old email address still works. If Vodafone stops forwarding it, you won't be able to get access to those sorts of things and your Apple ID might be dead-ended. Once you get into here, you can see it's got all of the information like your payment details, subscriptions, which devices is currently signed into that particular Apple ID for different things, your phone number, and your other email addresses and things like that. To change your Apple ID, you go into the Edit button, and then in there is a button now for Change Apple ID. And when I click on that, you specify what your new email address is. I obviously don't want to do this for my own one, but if I type in my new email address and click Continue, what it does is it then emails you at that new address with a link that you have, with a code that you've got to type in to confirm it, a 6-digit code, and that proves that you actually have that email account. And once you've done that, it then immediately changes over to the new email address, and your Apple ID then stops working using your old email address. You then have to start using your new email address. And one of the problems you tend to run into is if you don't do this in the right order, your devices might currently be signed in using your old email address, and they can't upload everything they might have been in the middle of doing because they can no longer sign in properly. So the general guideline is you should sign out of your Apple ID on most of your devices before you change your Apple ID, particularly for iCloud stuff. On the Mac, you go into System Preferences, iCloud, and there is a Sign Out button at the bottom. And what that will do is it will delete everything from your computer that belongs on iCloud. So it will delete your contacts, your calendars, all that sort of stuff. But they're all on iCloud, so that's okay. In fact, it usually asks you for quite a few of them, do you want to keep a copy on your computer? And generally it's best to answer no, because if you do keep copies of some things, you end up with 2 copies of them afterwards, because you're basically going to sign out of everything and then sign back in again. So for example, I did this with one person and forgot to sign out of contacts. They got a complete copy of all their contacts on their computer. They signed in again, now they had 2 complete copies of every single contact. And we then had to go and pull out the ones that were on the computer and delete them again because they were duplicates. Sorry?
I had duplicates, remember?
Yeah. I can remember who it was.
I went from POP to Gmail to iMac.
Yeah. So that's one of them. You also need to sign out of everything else on your computer that is linked to your Apple ID, which includes iTunes account, sign out, App Store, similar account, sign out, FaceTime account, sign out, messages, go into the iMessage account, sign out of that as well. So everything that has actually got an Apple ID, which is an independent setting, has got to be signed out. On recent iOS devices, there is a single place you can sign out of most of them. They have to be running iOS 10, I think, or later, 10.3 possibly, when they change the interface and settings so that there is a single item at the top of settings which has got all your Apple ID stuff. There's a single sign out button there which takes care of iTunes, App Store, and iCloud. It does not take care of messages and FaceTime. They've got to be separately done. And in that case, I found there's a slight mystery. You don't turn the feature off. You tap on your Apple ID and then choose the sign out button. Because if you turn it off, it gets confusing. I can show you if I've swapped devices, but I've got to fiddle with the connections. So actually, easier option. If I plug this in, I can... Sorry? Yeah, I think I've covered most of it in the summary on the website. I'm just emphasising it because it's horrendously messy, as I said. I've been through this 5 or so times already now with various people, so
Is that on a website we can look at, can we?
I have put that document and I sent an email out to all members who are on the announcement mailing list with the instructions. So the separate email I sent out about a week ago with the link to that document. So if anybody didn't get that email, just let me know and I'll just point you in the right direction. It's actually easy to remember. It's welmac.org.nz/Vodafone.
Oh, I've looked at that.
They might go, they can actually see you talking about all this, and there's probably got anything,
Yep.
so you can download the video.
So if I plug my phone in, then we can have a quick look at what's on the screen. I'll show you the settings that I'm talking about on the phone. And I don't want personal hotspot on at the moment, so let's just turn that off. Off, please. I want to go into QuickTime and go record screen and pick my phone. No, let's try that again. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Why is it not doing anything? It's not doing it. Why not? Oh, that's why. Wrong choice. It's not even giving me the option. Why not? Okay, that's not going to work for me, so let's not worry about it. Yeah, basically, I wanted to show you the user interface. I had to actually dig out the right adapter cables and plug it in because the computer's not cooperating on me. That one. Find the right one. There's too many adapters. No. One of these two. That's the one. Let's try that. Okay, bye-bye computer. Hello iPhone. Fingers crossed. Okay, so there is settings on my iPhone. The item at the top here, which is the Apple ID, so if I go into that top item, down the bottom of that there is a sign out button. So that will sign out of your Apple ID, including iCloud, iTunes and App Store. If you're running an older iOS version, there are separate items for them. There's an iCloud item in the main list and a separate iTunes and App Store item. But apart from that, there is also, under Messages, there is a Send and Receive section, and inside that there is a Apple ID at the top, and you tap that and there is an option to sign out. That's where you need to go. I'll show you that again. So if you go back to Settings, find Messages, then go look for the Send and Receive item, and inside that you've got your Apple ID, tap that, and now you can choose Sign Out. Okay, that's the Messages, yep. It's one of the steps that's necessary to change your Apple ID.
When you sign out, that's got rid of it, has it?
No, that stops you from accessing the iMessage service. It doesn't delete any messages on your phone. So it's just preventing you from accessing it. Because the idea is you want to do all this before you change your Apple ID, preferably. Though the messages and FaceTime ones are probably okay to do afterwards. It's the iCloud one that's the dangerous one. FaceTime is similar, but it's not hidden quite as deeply. So I go into FaceTime, and right there is the Apple ID. So again, I tap the Apple ID and then go Sign Out. So I won't do that, of course. And after you've done that, you go through the Apple ID website, you change your Apple ID, you make sure you've authenticated the new address, and then you go and sign in on everything again. Reverse what you've just done, basically. Yep.
On my computer, every time I go to do an email, it comes up the window about
probably asking you to type in your password again.
Yes, and I always just put later, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, well
Does that mean I'm not on either?
you're signed into iCloud, but you haven't typed in your password recently enough, and it's asking you to type it in again to confirm that it's still working.
It's the same as the Apple ID.
Yes, your iCloud account and your Apple ID are always the same password.
And my question actually was, does it mean that I'm not on iCloud?
No, you must be on iCloud if you're getting that message, because that means that it was previously signed in, but basically the iCloud connection on the computer operates on a timeout basis. So once it's signed in, if I go back into system preferences again, wait for it. Once it's signed in, it remembers your connection, even if you change your password or you can even change your Apple ID and it will still work for a while. But at some point it will ask you to type your password in again. And it does that on a periodic basis just to confirm that your account is still working properly. And effectively it's got a time-limited authentication to access your iCloud account.
So I'll still need to sign out.
No, you don't need to sign out for that particular one. That's a separate issue. That's just making sure. That's just, if it's asking you to go into system preferences and type in your password again, do that anyway first.
Yeah, but when we come to do all this signing out,
You want to make sure your iCloud is signed in before you start trying to sign out, because if you're in that state and you sign out, you may not have uploaded some information to iCloud, and you'll lose that information when you sign out of iCloud. So you want to make sure you're correctly synced to iCloud before you sign out. Okay, so if it's,
You're signed into iCloud.
because this will show you are signed in like that.
Okay.
Because it'll look like that. If you aren't, the system preferences iCloud will simply ask you for your username and password. That's all it shows. I can probably show you one in an older system which is not signed into my iCloud account. I can start up Mountain Lion for argument's sake. And I think we're going to have to stop there because it's taking longer than I thought. Oh, if I just let that run on. So any other questions while I'm just waiting for that to go through?
David, you haven't mentioned the issue of all the people who are sending us emails telling us that...
That's a problem anyway, so that's going to happen.
Well, we had a very strange thing. We have a committee of 8 people, and the treasurer sent out a message to the 8 people, and the normal system is that you reply to all. But the treasurer picked up one person's old email address.
Mm-hmm.
So when people replied to all, that person didn't get any of the reply to all. And everybody wondered what on earth was happening. I actually tracked it, what had happened, and then spelt it out talking to the perpetrator of the crime, copied it to everyone, and thought hopefully everyone will see what they had.
So that's another problem.
Then I had to go to previous recipients. Oh, no, wait a minute, I've missed one part of the story. I tried to email the person who was missing out myself, and you know what? My computer decided that this new address that had come in from her must be better than the one I had, and tried to use it.
Yeah.
That's what really got my back up and made me sort it out. But then I always go to previous recipients and delete their old
So
email.
for those who don't know about that feature, Mail remembers everybody you've received a message from.
Yes.
So if somebody else changes their email address, you've actually got to go into your previous recipients list, which is underneath the window menu, find their old email address and delete it. So where's one? That's Colin Smith. It just sent me his new email address. Yeah, but I haven't actually sent him any email recently, so that's all right. Just to take one example. To Anne Sherrington, I just looked at then. So I think I've already done Don Nicol.
In that case,
Yes, I had.
chaos
So
with
yep.
that.
So you can search for people by partial names or something like that. So basically, you want to make sure that their old email address is not in your previous recipients list, because Mail will use that in preference to anything else it knows about.
It sometimes throws up both.
But also you need to go. You've also got to go and look at your contacts and make sure that not running at the moment, just unusually. If I go into contacts, you've also got to go and find the person's contacts card. So, for example, in Colin's case, I actually edited it in there, and that corrected the email address. So you've got to actually find the contact card, edit it, change their address, and also make sure you delete it from previous recipients, and make sure you never reply to an old email from them, because that'll be the wrong address. So it's a pain for everybody, not just the person who's got it.
Love Vodafone.
Yeah.
You just gotta love them.
So I would not be surprised if a number of people leaving Vodafone in sheer frustration and fury at them. It will be much bigger than normal.
That's probably why they're going to float soon.
The question is, David,
Yep.
are other internet providers going to do the same thing?
Well, yes, Extra decided not to. They decided they actually switched all their email hosting from Yahoo to a local provider. It wouldn't surprise me if, oh, well, Vodafone can get away from it, why don't we do this as well? So just because your email is not a Vodafone address, don't think you're safe. If you've got anything at Internet Service Provider address, there is a possibility that they might decide to do the same thing in future. So anybody with an Extra address or a Actrix address or whatever, if Voyager decides they want to shut down all the Actrix addresses.
Should we start using iCloud address?
Yeah, so the safest way to protect yourself from that thing is to have your own domain name, but that's complicated, unfortunately. It's also worth mentioning, if you have a Gmail or an Outlook account, they are free at the moment. Gmail were giving away free accounts specifically so they could harvest information about people and learn about you and link it to everything else they know about you and advertise things to you. They've recently said they're going to stop reading your email to work out what to advertise to you, in which case, why are they still offering Gmail accounts? When's the other shoe going to drop? What are they going to do instead? So just keep that in mind as well. You may find that even if you've moved away from Vodafone, you may have to do this again. Again, having your own domain name means you don't need to change your email address more than once. Because that's, in my case, I've got a mac.com, which I'm hoping will stay there, which I don't use for email, so that's reasonably okay. And my several personal domain names that I've been using for several years now, and I'm gradually moving everything to one of those so that they'll never need to change. I might need to change where they're hosted, but I won't need to change everybody else talking to me via those addresses, because they'll just see it as a technical change under the hood. So,
iCloud should be reasonably safe, shouldn't it?
sorry?
iCloud should be reasonably safe.
iCloud should be, unless Apple decides that the email's too hard and will just stop doing that. So, again, same problem. Basically at some point, somebody's going to decide, oh, let's just get rid of this entire email system altogether, and it will slowly, the dominoes will fall, because the entire system is falling over with courtesy of spam. So various attempts have been made to try and deal with this problem, but they haven't succeeded yet. Okay, I think we better stop there. Are we more or less ready, Margaret?
We are, water's done.
Good.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
Dazed and confused.
Yeah. So it's more of a, this is what's coming. Hopefully it'll get better and better.